You look at the full range of human existence, and that is, you look at history, how people had lived in the past for thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of years. What can be expected in a human life? What is the range of emotions and satisfactions that a human being can achieve? Just find something acceptable. Okay. Work hard at it. As you get better, you will begin to like it. Passion will follow. As you make yourself more useful to the world, because by getting better, you can contribute back. Like, you will start enjoying it. Do I regret? I also sometimes regret things. Yes, certainly. Eliminating what I didn't like? No, I don't think so. In fact, the regret might be the opposite. Hey, I didn't lead a life of experiment. When I had the time, I didn't search for what truly satisfied me. Right. That's a different kind of regret. Maybe that regret actually is a more painful regret because it will come at the end of life. Or maybe when you can't anymore experiment. Right. The Stoics believe that one should always do one's duty. And the way they define duty is that, look, you have certain innate abilities and talents and experiences. Find out what they are and then see what the world needs. Try to match the two. And then you will be happy, according to them, eudaimonistically happy. A lot of life is just chance. If you are on top of that, you may not have won the genetic lottery. So don't keep beating yourself down. But yes, that doesn't mean that nothing is in your control. The other day I was with acid attack victims and I was listening to their testimonies in an event. And you begin to realize that this world can be a horror show. But then you realize that chance or luck turned for them also in some ways, because these women that I met now work for an organization that runs cafes. I saw that they were quite happy. Why? Because they had a kind of bonding together. They had all suffered this process through this process. So their bonding was actually much deeper. They really cared for each other in a way that people who had not been victims or had not gone through that process would not have had that kind of bonding. We devalue hard work by people who are not following necessarily the passion in life, that is physical work. For example, janitors, cleaners, people who are doing honest work, blue-collar jobs, and they're honest people. They're trying to earn a living, pulling a rickshaw. We are looking down upon them, and this is quite common in our country. You can't have everything. You can't have a short process and also be exactly as you want it to be. You need to cut the process short, or if you want it in a more free, developed form, it's a longer process. The human heart is perpetually searching for something, and you may not even be satisfied with this, and you may actually want to be, immortal. You may never want to die. You may want to become godlike, not just the god of small things, but the god of big things and of everything. But the thing is that possible? Is that even a feasible thing for a human being? So, first of all, what is the system? How should you go about it? So, I could put it graphically. Through a process of self-reflection, that is searching, and elimination. Eliminating take either mentally or by doing that. Similarly, for finding meaning, through a process of self-reflection and elimination, you arrive at something that is likable. Subject that's like it. Okay. And you develop over time high skills, and until you develop mastery by getting better, and then you have a career, basically. That is, you start liking it even more, what you did, whatever you choose. Because as you get better at things, begin to enjoy them, right? People often tell you there's a second process, which is easier, just find your passion, okay? But I tell you that's bad advice. Why? Because you may not have a passion, but even if you have a passion, when you will get down to working on it, you will find that there will be some resistance, there will be some difficulties. You have to develop the capacity to ignore those difficulties, to overcome those difficulties, to go through the pain and hard work required to again achieve mastery, get better at it, and only then, once you achieve some kind of high skill level, will you have a career, even in a place which you're passionate about. Okay? So, hey, you can go about it if you really, of course, love something, you love some kind of sport or music or art, or fine, you're very passionate, go ahead, do it. If you're not, most of us are not very passionate, right? So, or anything. So, hey, then you have to do a process of self-reflection. look at your past, as I mentioned, your time in school, outside of school, extracurricular, what you like, what you did like, ask people around you. And once you go through this process, maybe try internships, try working at places, uh, and out of those, as happened with me eventually, I serendipitously, by good luck, came to this teaching profession. Now, my life is, you know, full of bad luck also. That is, I had a lot of bad luck for a long time. My difficulties, as I mentioned, with ADHD and lack of meaning and existential stress. Now, luck can even get worse than that because I don't want to use the word luck because it's religious. Let's say chance can get even worse than that. That is, by chance, the other day I was with acid attack victims and I was listening to their testimonies in an event. And you begin to realize that this world can be a horror show. Yeah. And, but then you realize that chance or luck turned for them also in some ways because these women that I met now work for an organization that runs cafes. They are called Shiros cafes. Here, instead of heroes, it's Shiros, and they serve tea, coffee, etc. And I saw that they were quite happy. Why? Because they had a kind of bonding together. They had all suffered this process through this process. So their bonding was actually much deeper. They really cared for each other in a way that people who had not been victims or had not gone through that process would not have had that kind of bonding. So they were in a better place. I mean, I'm not saying their lives were ideal at this. There was much that we can do, as a state can do to improve their lives. But what I'm saying is, it's no life is completely full of horrors. And no life is completely free of horrors either, or is completely easy. Now, how do you cut short that process? Well, there are two ways. One is, and this is a view which you can read about in the articles which I had mentioned below in the description to this video. That is one process. One uh, pathway is, okay, just find something acceptable. Okay, work hard at it. As you get better, you will begin to like it. Passion will follow. As you make yourself more useful to the world, because by getting better, you can contribute back. Like, you will start enjoying it. Of course, the job should not be very disagreeable. So, how do you distinguish something which is in the short term difficult, but could be a career, versus something which is clearly disagreeable? If the job still seems, after years of doing it, as if it is horrible and you would rather jump out of that window rather than go to work, or you would rather hit your head against a wall rather than open that laptop and do that work, then obviously after a few years if there's still feeling that persists, then probably it was not for you. Whereas if you work hard and it's frustrating even in the short term, but at the end of the day you have a feeling of accomplishment and you feel like going to work the next day and you keep getting better at it, then that probably thing, even though it was not perfect in the short term, is the thing for you. The second way is, do your duty. The Stoics believed that one should always do one's duty. And the way they define duty is that, look, you have certain innate abilities and talents and experiences. Find out what they are and then see what the world needs. What does the community, the world around them need? Try to match the two. And then you will be happy. According to them, eudaimonistically happy. Stoics is a school. So they took in the wisdom of the Greeks and they developed it in their own way. So, one, you will say, we all have duties. For example, I have duties towards my students. As a professor, I write sometimes. That's as a writer, towards my family, towards my neighbors and my citizens, my fellow citizens, towards other human beings, towards colleagues. And these responsibilities change and these duties change per age. But something else when you're a child, something else when you're an adult and a old person. So, the duties can guide you and give you meaning when you can't find meaning through other things. So, one duty is to, of course, support yourself financially, at least, if not your family. Suppose you don't have a family or your family is not dependent upon you. If your family is dependent upon you, of course, clearly that's a duty. I didn't cut short my process. I went through a process which was over a decade and a half long. I suffered, etc. I had at the same time priced the value as well that I had ADHD. So, and I suffered for that. So I learned from that, hopefully. And so what I'm quoting from are articles on psychologists, on philosophers, and I'm also putting you ancient philosophy and what has worked perennially. So now some people may say, hey, what if I don't feel that duty? What if I don't recognize that duty? What if I don't think that is my duty? Well, in that case, that's up to you. The Stoics would say you would be unhappy. The Greeks would say you would be unhappy you didn't do your duty. But maybe you're right. In some cases, the duty can be onerous, can be painful. For example, you can be expected to do things as a son or a daughter which you don't want to do. In which case, it's up to you. But then remember, the responsibility to the consequences also you should live through, right? Because as Socrates said, the one who knows virtue will do it. The one who doesn't do virtue is because he's or she is ignorant of it. Ignorance leads us to this. So be conscious of the long-term consequences of what you're doing. But if you're sure about it, go in and do it. Then find meaning in some other ways. You can't have everything. You can't have a short process and also be exactly as you want it to be. You'd need to cut the process short, or if you want it in a more free, developed form, it's a longer process. I would say something on flow as well. When you put it, and the book is right here. I had this guy, believe it or not, his name is Csikszentmihalyi. The guy who's done the most research on this. He's the founder of this concept, a Hungarian-American psychologist. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Yeah. The book is called Flow, and you can obviously get it online somewhere. So sometimes you may not find something which we have already discussed, which you are, say, clearly liking or passionate about, etc. But you feel a responsibility towards doing the job, and that responsibility, if you feel it intensely, for example, if you want to, you suffer from some trauma and you want to save the world or children from that kind of trauma, even if the process itself initially was not like to your liking, because you are so intensely motivated, we can go into a flow state. So flow state may also arise sometimes, not always, but sometimes from the fact that you are so long-term motivated that it provides you with short-term engagement in flow. That is, you are so motivated by the end goal that you, even though you don't like it, will continue with a disagreeable process even now. But that's rare. It requires very high levels of motivation, and I don't know if it's sustainable in the long term. And I'm saying to you again, focus on the process also, not just the end goals. So there is no simple answer, this bottom line. There is no simple answer and saying that, hey, if I like this, is it good for me?
It's all subjective because it depends on what your goals are, where you set yourself in the hole, how difficult you make it for yourself.
That, and how painful is it? Is it mildly painful? Is it very painful? And how long and how driven you are to overcome, or how tolerant you are, and what's your pain tolerance as well. Yeah, correct. All of that. How capable of hard work you are. Because ultimately, what is hard work? So hard work, scientists have discovered, also is partly genetic. Partly it's environmental, partly genetic. Yes. So genetic in the sense that hard work is the ability to go through pain. What is your pain tolerance? Whether it's physical, mental, intellectual, emotion. And the person who has greater pain tolerance can do that more often. A part of this is, of course, training, which is how you have been brought up, what has been your nurturing environment, what habits your parents have said, etc. Part of it is your genetic makeup. So it says, so hard work is the ability to go through pain. And Nietzsche said, the great man doesn't go through difficulties. He enjoys them. see, most of life is not in your control, because what genes you get, what environment you got growing up, which house you were born in, born in, what religion your parents followed or your family followed, or what kind of study habits you acquired from them. Uh, Suppose they were illiterate, they couldn't teach you at all. I think a lot of life is just chance. If you were on top of that, you may not have won the genetic lottery. So don't keep beating yourself down. But yes, that doesn't mean that nothing is in your control. There are some things uh, which are in your control.
So, you spoke about parents and home. So, I have a question. How to deal with societal pressures?
That's a great question, because, I also, as I mentioned earlier, under pressure went and studied physics and economics and other things. And I didn't follow my passion, which was history. And only lately have I come to IR, quite late in life. So, how to deal with pressures is you basically ignore them. I know it sounds very odd and very ugly by saying this, but there is just no other way, because, you know, short life. I mean, let me tell you, until yesterday, I was where you are up now. Today, I'm here, and tomorrow, I'll be gone. And so will you, and so will the viewers of this channel. So, life is too short, it's too precious. It's not worth following other people's wishes and diktats. Sometimes listen to them, because they have your best interest at heart, and their advice may be useful, especially when they tell you about uh, things about how to go about what you're good at, etc. And listen to them, but ultimately do what you think is right, because you should not live a life of regret at the end of life. You should not regret what you did not do, or why you did on someone else's saying something. So just ignore the societal pressures. I know it's easy to say it and it's difficult to do it, because expectations make us feel guilty. Also, we may not be financially able to follow our dreams, etc. But the path of happiness and fulfillment requires that at times you ignore not only societal pressures and not only your parents' pressure, but your own pressure also. Because sometimes you may have false notions of what is honorable, what is prestigious. You might think it's very prestigious to do something, and actually that is not the thing for you. Usually we judge all the time, and especially when it's something to do in India, especially something which is physical or with the hands or something like that. We say no, intellectual work is more valuable, and we devalue that, and that's not right. In fact, another way we devalue work is when we keep insisting on passion and like. Because when we insist on passion and like, as one of the articles which I'll put in the comments below, as one of the articles that I will put in the description below will show, we devalue hard work by people who are not following necessarily the passion and like, that is physical work. For example, janitors, cleaners, um, people who are doing honest work, blue collar jobs, and they're honest people. They're trying to earn a living, pulling a rickshaw. We are looking down upon them, and this is quite common in our country, because we think these are beneath us. These are, or somebody is doing some physical job. Uh, no, he's earning or she's earning a honest day's wage. This person is honest, hardworking. We have to value that, and this comes from that. That, oh, this person, it is they're for yes, they are forced into this job. Maybe they're not following their passion because their life circumstances took them there. But we should instead have compassion for what life circumstances force them. B, even if it's not compassionate and they're okay and financially, etc., we should think of them as doing something honorable. They're doing an honest day's job, and that is what their skills and that is what their circumstances are. So this following a passion can be wrong even ethically, apart from being wrong in terms of actually finding your goals. It can also be wrong because it may lead you to judge others falsely.
And I think a person who's got a job, who's doing an honest day's job, has more respect, is probably much more at peace with himself than person like me who comes from a very uh, stable background and not being able to choose a certain career. So
I mean, what could be more satisfying than putting bread on your family's table? They're putting a meal in your child's stomach. I mean, what can be more satisfying? He's doing it honestly, or she's doing it with hard work and sincerity. So yeah, that's true, right?
a question with regrets. How do you deal with the regret or regret? So my view is the contrary view. I think there should be no regret, for the simple reason that, look, when you tried something and eliminated it, at least you found out what you didn't like. Yeah. How many times can you do that? Yeah, come to that. And B, you learn to go through adversity. Any successful life or fulfilling life has to overcome adversity. So it taught you how to overcome adversity. Now, how many times can you do that? Well, you can do that as many times as you feel passionate enough to pursue your goals. Is yeah, do I regret? I also sometimes regret things. Yes, certainly. But um, regretting eliminating what I didn't like, no, I don't think so. In fact, the regret might be the opposite. Hey, I didn't lead a life of experiment. When I had the time, I didn't search for what truly satisfied me. Right. That's a different kind of regret. Maybe that regret actually is a more painful regret because it will come at the end of life. Or maybe when you can't anymore experiment. Right. And there's nothing sadder than that. But it's really peaceful, for sure. Oh, yeah, right. How do you define what is a successful career? Like, yeah, you established that it's a process. It's not like an end goal, but still, I mean, you need like some kind of a benchmark to understand that we are probably on the right path. Oh, that's great question, and that's great push. So, I don't define success uh, by the standards of most people. For me, it's not necessarily money or fame or other material goods that make me successful on a, but it is an important part. It is definitely an integral and important part to some extent, to a moderate extent, and we'll come to that later. But for me, a successful life is actually a well-lived life. A successful career is a fulfilling career with growth, something that I enjoyed, something in which I contributed. Okay, Professor, I mean, you've spoken so much about what meaning is and why it is important. But the real problem comes when you have to actually go out there and find it, and the process of it can be very daunting. So, how do you find it? How do you find it? Is what I would like to know more.
It's a great question. And, first of all, a purpose is slightly different from meaning. It's a sub part of meaning. Meaning is a larger concept because a meaning also, apart from purpose, requires things called coherence and something called mattering. That is, that is, meaning requires something like, am I valued? What is my position? Mattering, that you matter. It requires something such as that is, a life story should make sense to you. They should not be dissonance there too much. That's why if you suddenly change your beliefs or faiths or values, it can create cognitive dissonance. Or if somebody tells you some information which is contrary to what you have been told from childhood or from your family or from your country, it creates a lot of discomfort and then people reject it in such of the time. Only when things become too disaligned with what you have been told, evidence is too stark and in your face, then you adjust your values. That is, meaning and values are the last thing to be adjusted in one's life, actually. People hold on to their beliefs and faith until the day they die. So, how did I find it? It was a long process. As I said, it was an iterative process. I tried different things to make myself feel happy. And, as I told you, the working at the bank, I didn't get the promotions, which was I didn't value the bonuses, the extra cash which others did, the promotions, the fancy cars. So I've discovered slowly through trial and error and also reflection. They're saying that you should regularly take account of your relationships, of your career, and also of what gives you that meaning and value in life, and then remind yourself why you're doing this job. And it helps to give you more satisfaction, because what happens sometimes, you get lost in the job and you forget why I actually chose this career, why I chose this job. That meaning gets lost. Sometimes you even get frustrated or things become hard. And then when you remind yourself, no, I chose it for this reason, then it again gives you some satisfaction.
I have one last question for you. You've been talking about fulfilling career or not, but career is not just the only thing in life. Life is life. So, how can one have fulfilling life?
It's a very tough question. And that's a very tough question because there are many different answers to it. And just off the top of my head, I can think of three at least different answers. One is, as I mentioned, one is the Greek answer. That is, a fulfilling life is one which is virtuous, uh, according to Socrates and even according to um, Plato, Aristotle. That is one way we learn to control ourselves, make ourselves more responsible, temperate, uh, just towards others. Uh, and also one way we are civic, where we practice civic engagement, where we are engaged with the life of our community and our city and our state, that is, with our society, with others, basically. So, for them, for the Greeks, at least for Socrates, and so too for the others, this was actually even more important than health or wealth. That is, health or wealth didn't make virtue better. Virtue made health or wealth better. That is, by itself, having health or wealth was not meaningful. When health or wealth was had, virtuous personality was meaningful because virtue was the highest good. And even if you died without any health or wealth, uh, or lived without it, the second way is, the path of disengagement, slight disengagement, or taking the world as not as seriously as one would want to, or one is inclined to. For example, uh, this is what the Sufis, we can call it also the way of, say, uh, the bhakti, or one could even see it in, for example, in the disengagement practice in the Gita. You do nishkama karma, because you do your duty without expectation of reward. So a disengaged duty, even whether you are the householder or whether you are a warrior, or no matter what you are, you do a disengaged duty in the world. The Stoics saw also this is a path. They view taking the world a bit lightly, like a game, because otherwise it could lead to a lot of depression if you're not successful, or if you're very successful, then it could lead to overconfidence and arrogance. So Stoics also maintain some kind of disengagement, kind of disengagement, kind of equilibrium, temperance. So that's another way of trying to lead a fulfilled life. And the third way is, I don't know if there is any philosophical construct behind it, but this is my way. Is to look at the full range of human existence, and that is, you look at history, how people had lived in the past for thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of years. You see, okay, what can be expected in a human life? What is the range of emotions and satisfactions that a human being can achieve? That is, you could be maybe successful in your career. You could be a good son or a good daughter. You could be a good brother or sister. Maybe you could be a good father or mother. You could be a good friend. You could accomplish something in your job. You could maybe contribute something to the world. You could help your neighbor. And when you look at those range of satisfaction that are possible, if you got some chunk of that, you don't need to get the whole cake and stuff your mouth with it. You don't need to have everything. It's possible you didn't do well in your career, maybe as much as you expected to. But okay, you were a good, responsible family man. Say, maybe you did not have a family, you never got married in that sense, but you were a good son, you were a good neighbor, maybe you were a good mentor to others. So, did you get some of those satisfactions? And then at the end of life, you say, okay, I had something. In fact, I had enough, more than what most people have. As you know, most people don't even survive childbirth in the old days. 50% of children would die before they were adults. So, or people live miserable lives, sometimes, in poverty, in sickness. So, did you experience a fair chunk, and then do you have gratitude for that? That could lead to some kind of, ultimately, people could be completely dissatisfied even with that, but then, because ultimately, okay, ultimately, people may want to become literally gods. Maybe people don't want to die. Consciousness that you are an I am is going to end. This journey is going to end. We know this. that we are mortal, and we see it around us all the time. Life is coming to an end, and so will we. Now one sense of a fulfilling life or solace can come from religion, but for me, the greater solace comes from having experienced the full range of possible human satisfactions. The human heart is uh, perpetually searching for something, and you may not even be satisfied with this, and you may actually want to be, immortal. You may never want to die. You may want to become godlike, not just the god of small things, but the god of big things and of everything. But the thing is that possible? Is that even a feasible thing for a human being? Within the realm of what is feasible, what is possible, did I get a good chunk out of that? Did I get a fair chunk out of that? And then be satisfied, I have gratitude. And that is one way to lead a fulfilling life.
Incredible. That's incredible.